G4TV started in 2002 with a simple game of Pong. It was at one point what I considered to be the absolute best channel on television. Its entire lineup of shows seemed to be specifically designed to stimulate my prepubescent ADHD diagnosed brain, because it was the network for gamers. Long before TBS and ESPN started showcasing esports, G4TV was hosting competitions on its show Arena. Before everyone on YouTube had a top 10 list, you could find the latest countdown on Filter. Any trailers that came out that you might have missed could be found on Cinematech, which was basically a half an hour of advertisements. Icons and game makers brought you documentaries on notable people in the industry at the time. Any gaming news that was worth knowing was talked about on Pulse. It even had game reviews that could be found on Judgment Day. And let's not forget X-Play and Attack of the Show, which we will get into later. Hold your horses. This is a long story. Even though G4TV was the first network solely focused on gaming, it was not the first tech channel. In fact, some of you might remember Tech TV back in the late 90s. It featured shows like Robot Wars, Anime Unleashed, and Nerd Nation. But G4TV was something different. It had a very specific audience from the start, but knew if done right, it would have a devoted fan base. These are people who love video games so much that they would gladly spend their time listening to someone they've never met talk about video games they most likely will not end up playing. Get it? It's a meta joke. You had Blister for action games, Portal for multiplayer games, Sweat for sports games, Game On, Gamer TV. Who in their right mind would watch this much game content? Me in middle school, that's who. And I'ma say this right now. I didn't watch Tech TV at all. Not a single show. But it's not surprising that in 2004, G4 absolutely devoured Tech TV in a merger that spawned both the greatest TV show ever created and the most painfully forced written line in cinematic history.
This is why I'm missing my Saturday morning G4 Tech TV weekend wrap-up.
Shortly after this acquisition, G4 started to cancel some of its less popular gaming shows and replace them with new shows using the old Tech TV IPs. This included X-Play, which was a fucking game changer. It is pivotal to the story arc of this channel to know how good X-Play was, but I'm going to try to stop this circle jerk from becoming an all-day event, so all I'm going to say is that whenever Adam Sessler and Morgan Webb introduced themselves, the next half an hour of content would have the perfect ratio of information and comedy, from the best duo in television since Beavis and Butthead. This show still serves as a personal inspiration of mine to this day. The premiere of X-Play also acts as a fulcrum in G4's overall quality, ushering a golden age from 2005 to 2007. Even though by this time veteran shows like Game Makers and Arena were on their last leg, the new programming mixed with reruns of Robot Wars was allowing G4 to gain popularity, the most notable of which being Attack of the Show, which was essentially a podcast with skits hosted by Kevin Pereira and anyone else who was free that day. But eventually they stuck with Olivia Munn, who was the second half of another great television duo with entertaining conversational improv and willingness to provide raw, unapologetic fan service. 2005 is the year G4TV got a new president who started to shift the direction of the channel. They started getting a little bold with their filler programming, with a segment called G4's Late Night Peep Show, you know, to really hone in on that young male audience they wanted. Because let's face it, the only thing us guys love more than video games are pretty girls with jiggly boobs, am I right? And I'm not saying a girl can't like boobs, but when Cinematech runs a sub-series called Nocturnal Emissions, it's really safe to assume what demographic they were going for. By the way, you're not really missing much. It was like 15 minutes of someone playing games that allowed beach photo shoots of half-naked virtual breasts. Really soft-core stuff compared to today's standards. It was a different time. But to really drive the point home, they eventually felt the term peep show was too subtle and decided to call that segment Midnight Spank. In fact, as a young boy, I felt there was an abnormal amount of attractive women on this station. So I've decided to put these women in a category called G4 waifus, which are kind of like Disney princesses, but they're better at wiggling joysticks. I hope you enjoy that joke. It took me half an hour. See, a G4 waifu has more power than a queen in chess. They're able to take any mild topic and make it exciting, sometimes able to carry the entire weight of a show. There is no way Cheat would have continued to air new episodes if not for Kristen Holt and her perky enthusiasm for what essentially boiled down to walkthrough commentary. On a completely unrelated note, this is also the year G4 put Happy Tree Friends on TV, and if you haven't seen Happy Tree Friends, I suggest you pause the video and go watch every episode. Moving on to 2000 2006, stuff starts to get a little weird. A lot of good shows have been canceled. Rest in peace, Judgment Day. You will be sorely missed. But don't worry, guys. We got reruns. In fact, they started bringing in other shows to air their reruns. And I'm not just talking nerd shit like Star Trek, even though that was there too. I'm talking about Arrested Development, The Man Show, The Jamie Kennedy Experiment, even Cops and Cheaters. Nobody wanted these shows. But it's okay. They can't hurt us anymore. Remember when I said 05 from 07 was the golden age? Well, it was actually the eye of a massive storm. And right in the middle was the king of all rerun shows, Ninja Warrior. Was started as Sasuke and Kuniuochi. Listen, I can barely speak English. Give me a break. What originally started as an obstacle course game show in Japan was then compiled and re-aired. But instead of having ridiculous plots and a bunch of sparks, this was real people showcasing amazing feats of agility and stamina. This was G4's big hit of the year, and unfortunately it taught executives that they didn't need a show about gaming to find success on the channel. Although the majority of G4's original foundation was demolished, the core structure was still solid. Good shows that were still running maintained their faithful audience, but seeing as how the only shows worth watching were Attack of the Show, X-Play, Cheat, and Ninja Warrior as clearly stated on their website, this resulted in massive blocks of third-party programming, which only got worse as the time went on. I'm talking 4 hours of totally outrageous behavior, 4 hours of the Jamie Kennedy Experiment, and that was just to start the day. Ask anyone who watched G4 how they feel about Cops and Cheaters. I promise you, we will get to that later. Unfortunately, even the original show started to see a decline. The place they filmed X-Play got shut down and instead had to use a smaller studio owned by the E! Network. It's like when your parents get divorced and your dad ends up in that one-bedroom apartment with a mini fridge full of beer in his room and the toilet that he has to teach you how to flush properly. Anyone? Just me? On a lighter note, following their trend of having one good show a year, they introduced the world to Code Monkeys, this pixelated adult cartoon with plenty of crude humor. I thought it was pretty decent, but Jonathan Colton steals the show with this incredible theme song.
Code Monkey, get up, get coffee. Code Monkey, go to job. Code Monkey, have boring meeting with boring manager Rob.
Oh, and to round off 2007, G4 would also spend an exorbitant amount of money airing episodes of Heroes right about the time everyone stopped caring about Heroes. Moving on to 2008, most of the channel is completely unrelated to games, but they were sure to at least try to maintain appearances, sometimes running mini-segments of Cheat in the feed between shows, but there was still this small pocket of entertainment, this smooth-sailing butter zone that would carry them for years to come. And this is what I'm talking about right here, 6 p.m. to 9:30 p.m. We got two episodes of Ninja Warrior back to back, then a new episode of Attack of the Show, followed by a new episode of X-Play. Undoubtedly, the 7 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. block is what everyone is watching for. Then immediately after that, we have the same 2 episodes of Ninja Warrior that just played before Attack of the Show, as you can see right here. This was a nightly occurrence. Their new show this year was Human Wrecking Balls, where 2 dudes destroyed shit with their bare hands. It had its moments. Oh, and they made an animated version of Spaceballs if you're into that. But most importantly, they started G4 Rewind, finally airing some old shows, allowing viewers to think fondly back to the station's roots and why they were all there in the first place. 2009 rolls along, and they immediately canceled Cheat, seeing as how it was already being integrated into X-Play. Okay, we're off to a good start, I guess. Most of their third-party filler programs have been cycled out, so no more Jamie Kennedy, no more Peter Serafinowicz, no more Man Show, Arrested Development, or Super Big Product Fun Show, and I say good riddance to all of them. But now they got slots to fill, so we get G4 Underground, a documentary series hosted by Morgan Webb, a new talk show with Chris Hardwick called Web Soup, an American Ninja Warrior, which was terrible. And okay, listen, it's not like it was a bad show, but it wasn't as good as the original Ninja Warrior, okay? Can we all admit that? Can we put that behind us? Besides, there's more important programs to talk about, like the International Sexy Ladies Show, or Campus PD. You know what? You're right. It's finally time, okay? Campus PD, Cops, Cheaters, and the variations of Ninja Warrior. Those are the shows that killed this channel. And the downfall was completely transparent. It went from G4, the channel for gaming, to G, 4 hours of cops, G, 4 hours of campus PD, G, 4 blocks of the same 4 shows, none of which have anything to do with gaming. They even made small segments acting as an interlude between programs that were meant to hold people over until the next relevant piece of content. This included tech reviews, top 3 countdowns, and a minute with Morgan Webb, and let's be honest, who wouldn't want that? You know what they call this segment? The G-Spot, which is both insanely clever and cringy at the same time. Also, I might be slightly off with my timing on this one, but it's important to note that Attack of the Show reruns would marathon constantly. Not only that, but it was also like half of G4's advertisements, so you would be watching Attack of the Show, and the commercials would be telling you to watch more Attack of the Show right before your next episode of Attack of the Show. And I love Kevin Pereira and Olivia Munn just as much as everyone else, okay? But the marketing team didn't have to take the attack part of their title seriously. It's just this onslaught of clips all the time. I've already seen her eat the hot dog on the string, guys. I get it. But that being said, they reached their 1000th episode that year, which is an astronomical accomplishment. And in 2010, X-Play also reached its 1000th episode, which was accompanied by, you guessed it, a 6-hour marathon. I watched it and it got to be a bit much at the end, but it was so refreshing. See, it's important to note that after X-Play got its new studio, they started to cut out a lot of what made the show great. No more skits like Splinter Cell Co-op Theater with Bob and Steve. They even had this one skit that was like a parody of Cops where they would try to apprehend Kratos, and it was good. Just go look it up. Unfortunately, from 2010 onward, it was just a downhill slope. DirecTV sees a lack of interest in G4 and backs out of their deal. While G4 was way ahead of the curve when it came to gaming news and reviews, they obviously lost touch with their audience, who by this time started watching YouTube videos instead, like an adult. Mind you that this entire time G4 has been consistently updating its website, very successfully actually, keeping up to date with the latest game news the entire time, and even touting as the most trusted video game website according to OTX Research, whoever they are. So even though their scheduling looked like this, their actual website was pretty decent when it came to actual video game content. It's just packed to the brim. 2011 saw new shows like Bomb Patrol Afghanistan, which I did not watch, and G4's Proving Ground, which I did watch. It was hosted by Jessica Chobot and the late Ryan Dunn, who would test out different scenarios seen in video games, but in real life. Pretty entertaining. 2012 comes along. January 5th, on the very first week of the year, the CEO steps down. People have very mixed opinions on this man, but he was replaced with someone who was about 97 times worse. Filter gets canned because they ran out of ideas like 5 years ago. Things are looking bleak. They even get rid of the G-Spot. How dare they? What kind of monsters would both create and get rid of the G-Spot? It's been years of the same shitty reruns. Most, if not everyone, has lost hope. For almost half a decade, the only programs holding this network together were Attack of the Show and X-Play, and the casts of these shows were holding on for dear life. Then tragedy strikes. Adam Sessler has to leave the station. Words cannot express how soul-crushing this news was. The last game he reviewed for X-Play was Mass Effect 3, which must have been some sort of sick and twisted joke, seeing as how the story of Mass Effect 3 has an equally disappointing ending. This parallel is also made in his article Memories of My 16-Year Career in Video Games, but he puts a better spin on it than I have. Kevin Pereira would also step down from Attack of the Show because, quite frankly, he had better things to do than drown to death because of this sinking ship of a channel. X-Play would continue to be put on life support until the end of the year, where it was then subsequently cancelled, but not only that, so was Attack of the Show. G4 died on January 23rd of 2013, where both programs aired their series finales, leaving the network completely devoid of any original programming. But let's make things clear. This was a very slow and agonizing, painful death. They would continue to play cops for uncountable hours, just day in and day out, until they lost the rights in September of 2014. Afterwards, they would go back to showcasing some of their original programs for the last month or so, ending the channel with a top 100 games list, followed by the first episode of X-Play, then a gradually fading game of Pong, completing the revolution of this channel's life and death. There was a short period of time where the channel slot was going to be picked up by Esquire, but they quickly decided to just shut the whole station down and walk away from the wreckage. G4TV's URL now links to Sci-Fi's gaming website, which I didn't know existed until I started doing research for this video. But if you're bored one day, wipe the dust off the Wayback Machine. Take it for a spin because the newsfeed is a great nostalgia trip, and if nothing else, you'll get to see how often they would use Olivia Munn for promo. Also, look up G4 Freestyle 101 if you're a fan of the hippity hops. There's some golden nuggets in that trash bin. Some people found success on their own after leaving the channel, and others just decided to pack up and head home for a bit. But all of us, the viewers, were left with a fond memory of what used to be and could never be again. I feel as though even if G4 had kept all of its best programming, it would still eventually succumb to the same fate. The demographic that used to watch G4 now spends significantly less time watching television altogether, and the internet's never-ending sea of gaming content is a force that a TV channel could never combat with. As soon as a new game comes out, there will be hundreds of reviews posted the same day, and thousands by the first week. Plus, due to the rise of social media, you're now able to contact people creating games directly, so the bridge between developer and player has gotten shorter and shorter over the years, making public knowledge of what used to be considered insider information. Times have changed, and so is the way to promote a product. Companies are met with significantly more options than bidding on an advertisement slot for a TV channel. Even players are able to profit from promotion of a game both directly through endorsements or indirectly through other sources of ad revenue. So nowadays, by the time an advertisement even reaches TV, the group of people who are interested have already known about it, making the whole process redundant. But G4 wasn't just the best place to get info on the latest news in gaming. In fact, to say so would be an insult. G4 entertained us like no other channel could, and showed that video games weren't just for acne-ridden children yelling in their basement. They were an art medium that reached far and wide despite whatever stigma others tried to put on them or the players. G4TV didn't insult or berate you for playing too much. In fact, it thrived off allowing you to indulge yourself in this hobby. Even though this channel lost itself along the way and met an unfortunate end, its idea and eventual sacrifice acted as a catalyst. You were able to see the spirit of G4 in countless content creators, myself included. Because when it comes to what G4TV really did for me specifically, it proved that you were able to make an honest living just by talking about video games and your experience with them. And for that, I will be forever grateful. But as always, I want to know what you think. Did you even watch G4? Because if you didn't, then luckily you can find a lot of its original programs scattered throughout this website. My personal recommendations are Icons, Judgment Day, and, well, obviously X-Play. Feel free to leave your favorite shows in the comments. If you enjoy me talking about various topics in gaming, such as this one, hit that subscribe button, or don't, whatever. But if you want to have a personal conversation with me, then the best way to do that is through the Daily Quest Discord. There's a link in the description of every video, and most importantly, as always, have a nice day. Peace out.